Hi, I'm Milesy, and today I want to take you through my stitching box. And this box has a little bit of everything that I use when I'm doing my stitching, starting from some of the more basic tools to some things that you don't usually think are stitching tools, but which I find are really helpful. So I just wanted to take you through all of these today and show you a little bit of what I have, how I use them, and give you some ideas of things that you might want to add to your own stitching box. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So the first thing I have in my stitching box is this smaller stitching box right here that has pretty much everything that I don't want getting lost in the bigger box. And there are some pretty basic things in here and a couple of not so basic things in here. First thing, the most important thing for your stitching box are your needles. And I like to use size 24. There are a couple of 26s in here that have snuck in that I'll still use, but I don't like them as much. And I just buy those every time I go to the craft store. I just buy 2 or 3 packs because I go through them pretty quickly. Here are all the ones that I have right now. Those will probably last me a couple of months, but we'll see. And I don't usually care what kind of brand that I get, just as long as they're the right size, because I go through them so quickly anyway that I found it doesn't matter. Even if I get the gold-plated ones, they still get gross pretty quickly, so I'm not too picky about that. Next is my needle threader, which I don't really use all that much. It's just kind of there for when I do need it every now and then. I need it for like when I'm using rayon or sometimes even metallic floss. This little guy really comes in handy, and I go through these pretty quickly as well. I tend to break them more often than I lose them. I bought this pack of 3 and they were really nice and they looked really sturdy, and I broke them in like 3 days, so So one of the probably more non-traditional things for an embroidery box is my little push pin. I think that's what it is, some kind of little pin that you use for sewing. And I have blunted down the tip so that it's not actually sharp. And the reason I use my pin is that this is for when I'm counting the stitches when I'm doing my gridding on the fabric. This makes it very easy to see where I'm going and how many stitches I've counted out, and I've dulled it down so it doesn't get stuck on the fabric. It's very easy to just slide it over the fabric. And it makes counting out your grid so much easier. I strongly recommend just taking a decent little pin just like this and blunting down the end, and you'll be able to count your stitches when you're doing your grid so much faster. I also have my little crowbar thing, little plastic crowbar to go with the tacks for my stretcher bars. There we go. And I just like to keep these close by, that way I always know where they are and they're not going anywhere that I don't need them to go. But I probably need to buy some new ones because these are all starting to get a little bit kind of gross and not very nice, but they're not too expensive. I just need to remember to buy them the next time I'm on Amazon. Next, pretty typical, is a little seam ripper. This had a lid at one point, or a cap. I don't know where it went. Things disappear in this house pretty easily, but this is good for when you make a very big mistake and you need to pull out a lot of stitches. You just have to be really careful. It's very sharp and it will go through your fabric, so try not to do that, but I like to keep this guy handy as well. Next are my little Stork Scissors, and I really like my little Stork Scissors. They are pretty decent size, pretty sharp, and they're just good for cutting the floss and cutting itty-bitty little pieces on the fabric that you might need to cut. I'd be lost without these. I love these things so much. They're nice and sharp, they're tight, the thread isn't going to slip through the way it does with some other ones, but those are very nice to have. Next, I have a couple of really big upholstery needles, just like this, and I've also blunted down the end right there, that way it doesn't go straight through my finger if I mess up. But this is good for when you're mounting your pieces either in a hoop or in a frame, and you're not having to use your embroidery needle, which will snap or break. This can take a lot more thread and a lot more punishment, so you'll be able to string up your pieces really easily with this guy. Next are my needle minders. I've got 2. They're both exactly the same, just little itty bitty Thor needle minders. People ask me about these things all the time, and they are basically just a magnetic little thing that will hold on to your needle, and it's got a magnet on the back just like that you can put it either on your fabric. I like to just put it on the tacks on my stretcher bars though, and just keep it completely out of the way, but I'd be lost without these. I have 2, and I'm thinking about getting a few more because I keep losing the backing magnet on it, and I'd kind of like to keep those around. Next, I have a little thing of some Thread Heaven. There was a lid on this. I have no idea where it's gone. It's pretty old. I don't use this that much. I find that with cotton thread, it tends to leave a very unwanted coat on the thread and dulls the color up, but this is wonderful if you're using metallic floss. It really helps keep it from fraying up and just being too obnoxious. So that's a nice must-have, even though I hardly ever really use it, because I hardly ever really use metallic floss. Something that doesn't fit in my box, but I have much of this stuff, many spools, is just some pearl cotton in a variety of colors. I don't really use it for crochet or for anything else that you're supposed to do. I actually use this for stringing up my pieces, and I use that because it's nice and thick and you can double it over and it will go through the needle really well, and it won't break as easily as embroidery floss does. So that's just a good thing to have around for when I'm framing my pieces. And I am going to be doing a couple of videos on that, one for the hoops and one for in a proper frame, so stick around and watch for that. Now, in the bigger box of things that I don't use all the time, but I do like to keep around, the first one is just the little driver that I use for the tacks, and you've probably seen this in another video. It is magnetic, and will hold on to the tacks. That way you can drive them into your stretcher bars really easily. Pretty nice little gadget. I like it. I don't use it all that often, but I like to keep it around just in case. But it'll save your thumbs if you use your stretcher bars and have one of these. Next, I have these little compression gloves, and they're not very nice to look at. This is just one. I've got a second one somewhere. But these are really nice if you have problems with your wrists or you're trying to avoid having problems with your wrists. They just go on really easily like that, and they put a nice amount of pressure on your wrists and on your knuckles and your important joints in there. That way you're not letting them get too swollen and too painful. But it's always a good idea to take frequent breaks. Even I don't go all day. I tend to go about 2 or 3 hours at a time at the most, and I don't wear these as often as I should. I should really get in the habit of wearing these. I should also find the other one. I don't know where it's gone. The next thing I have, which I don't use very often because I really only need it for the 28 count stuff, is my big clip-on magnifying glass, and it's got this nice clip right here that goes straight onto my stretcher bars. It also has a light, but the light doesn't really like to work. It will turn off unless it's right in the right spot. And that's kind of annoying, but you know, it's a nice little thing. It magnifies at least, and I have an over-the-shoulder light anyway, so I don't really need the light on here. It's a little bit difficult to get used to though. I can't use it for very long because I'll get a headache kind of either way, just for different reasons, but I'm getting used to it. I'm trying to get in the habit of using it more, especially to keep my eyes from getting tired, but I've trained my eyes how to use this so I don't get tired. So it's kind of a weird catch-22 right now, but I like it anyway. I also keep a tape measure like this around. It's just your standard 60-inch tape. And this is mostly just used for measuring out my fabric and finding the center of the fabric. Every now and then I'll use it to actually measure out fabric to put it onto the bars, but for the most part I just kind of eyeball that. I don't really care if it's exactly the right size, but this is a nice thing to have if you're sewing or just even in general, because it's nice and compact and will fit pretty much wherever you need it to. I don't keep it in the little box. I keep it in the big box just because I don't use it that often. But it's a pretty nice little thing. I like it. I wish I had a couple more because I keep losing this one too. Next, I have my highlighters, and I would be so lost without these. I have the blue and the pink, and I have about 40 of each of them back here in this bucket, so I'm not going to run out for a while, but I do go through them fairly quickly. And I've had people ask me in the past, why do I use blue and pink and not any of the other colors? And it's just because blue and pink are both very easy to see, and when you combine them, they create purple, which is also easy to see and very distinct from the two of them. So that's really the only reason I use these colors as opposed to any other color they have. As you can see, probably over here, I don't think you can see that. There's another bucket full of highlighters that I don't use because they're the wrong color. Next on the list are the erasable pens, and I have a lot of people asking me questions about these as well. And these are just little water erasable pens. They're blue, and they come with a fairly sharp tip, actually. I really like these. And they do exactly what they say they'll do. You can write on the fabric, and as soon as you get the fabric wet, the the ink will completely erase and it will be gone. And this is what I use to do my gridding most of the time, not all of the time. But I like these a lot. I go through these really quickly as well, just because I do so much gridding that I tend to dry them out before the tip even starts to get dull. I think I've only had one pen that's survived to the point where the tip was able to get dull instead of running out of ink first. And I also have one big pair of very nice scissors. They're very tight, they're very sharp, and these are only for use on fabric, and they touch nothing else. They cut no paper, they don't cut hair, they don't cut anything but fabric, and that keeps them nice and sharp. And this is just what I use to cut my Ada, and not much else, but it's a very good thing to have around to just have yourself some good fabric scissors. And next, and this is something that people really don't think of as an embroidery tool, but I keep some high grain sandpaper around. And this is both so that I can blunt my upholstery needles or any pins that I'm using. And it also helps to fix some unhappy wooden hoops, or if my stretcher bars are starting to splinter, you just use this and sand it down and increase the life. So I like to keep a little bit of this around. I'm running out. This is all I have left, so I probably need to go buy some more. Next on the list of things that aren't usually considered an embroidery tool are my little bent needle nose pliers, and I think they're actually for jeweling, but I'm not sure. But they're really nice for me, especially because my stand won't let me see the back of my work. So if the needle gets stuck, I can just reach under there with this and pull the needle out, and it saves my fingers a whole lot of bleeding. I don't usually need it too much anymore, but it's still something nice I like to keep around. And the last little thing I like to keep in my stitching box is just some monofilament. And this is just some 14-pound red fishing line, basically. That's all it is. And this is what I use to do my gridding on 28 count fabric, because you can't really draw the lines on 28 count with the pen too easily, so this works out really well. And because it's this nice synthetic plasticky kind of material, you're not going to put your needle through it and it's not going to get tangled up. Once you've done your stitching, you can pull it right out, and there's no having to worry about trying to get it all out if the needle went through it. So there we go. But there we go. I just wanted to show you guys my embroidery box and everything that goes in it. If you have any questions, please put them down in the comment box below and I will get to them as soon as possible. But that's it for now. Please be sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps me out, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.